As the aircraft hurtles down, passengers face a new terror. Wreckage blocks their view of the cockpit, and when the airplane split apart, the nose dropped down, roughly 1 meter out of alignment. The plane is held together by just the narrow floor beams.
The floor was buckling up, and you could tell the plane was bending in the middle.
Michelle Honda can't go forward far enough to see whether the pilots are alive or dead. She tries to make contact via the intercom.
Can anyone hear me?
The wires are severed. As she struggles forward to try to reach the cockpit, she gets asked the one question she cannot answer.
Do we have a pilot?
I don't know.
Do we have a pilot?
I do not know. Can you fly a plane?
The terror of those on board can only be imagined as she asks the one question no airplane passenger wants to hear.
Can you fly a plane?
Michelle Honda was coming up and cupping her hands and yelling in everyone's ear individually, "Can you fly a plane?" I was like, what? You know, get out of here. Is the pilot gone too? You know, because you couldn't tell if there was anybody up there.
Do you know how to fly a plane?
No.
It's 2 minutes since the explosion. First Officer Mimi Tompkins tries to alert air traffic control at Honolulu. Recordings from the cockpit voice recorder, the black box, analyzed later by accident investigators, provide a dramatic record of exactly what took place.
Aloha 243, we're going down!
The nearest place where they can try to land is the island of Maui. Kahului Airport is in a valley between two volcanic mountain ridges. Directly between them and safety lies a 3,000-meter-high mountain. To fly from the location of the explosion to the safety of Kahului Airport, the pilot needs to carefully maneuver, avoiding this high ground. Can the fragile aircraft survive the stresses of turning, or, if they ever reach the airport, of landing? And how can those on board survive? Jane Sato Tomita is barely conscious. Howard Kitaoka clutches her hand. The only faint sign of life is once, when Jane squeezes back.
I'm not exactly sure she was conscious, but I did manage to squeeze her hand, and she responded by squeezing my hand, and we just held hands. The simple squeeze of the hand at a time like that is very, very emotional.
Aloha 243, do you read me?
Mimi Tompkins is not getting through to Honolulu air traffic control, so she switches to the frequency for the tower at Maui's Kahului Airport.
Maui Tower, Aloha 243. Maui Tower, Aloha 243.
Aircraft calling tower, say again.
Aloha 243.
At 1:48, 3 minutes after the explosion, the crew make their first voice contact with the ground.
Aloha 243, say your position.
To the east of Makita Point. Sending out 11,000. Request clearance into Maui for landing. Request the emergency equipment.
Airport fire station.
We have an Aloha 737 5 minutes out.
Approximately 20 miles. Cleared to runway 02. Decompression problem.
Pilot is declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Mauitar. In the station. Attention in the station. We have an in-flight emergency. We have a 737, 5 minutes out, 20 miles, runway 2. Souls on board, crew on board is unknown. It has decompression shower at this time. Runway 2.
Aloha 243. Okay, the equipment is on the field. It's on the way.
At 3,000 meters, flying west of the mountains, the pilot slows the aircraft and as gently as possible begins the right-hand turn towards Kahului. Passengers sense that someone must be in control of the aircraft.
I've had some training as a pilot, and we were wings level. It wasn't in a dive or a roll, it was wings level. At that moment, I thought, we have a chance.
Meanwhile, those on the ground are unsure about what kind of crisis they're facing. It's a small airport. An airliner in trouble will test the fire crew's experience. For the air controller, it's hard to hear the airplane at all.
Just to verify again, you're breaking up. Your call sign is 243. Is that correct?
Or 244.
Aloha 243! Aloha 243!
Aloha 243.
Plan straight ahead for runway 02. I'll keep you advised of any wind change.
Four minutes after the explosion, at this lower altitude, they're able to remove their oxygen masks. With their speed having dropped to a little over 380 kilometers an hour, the wind noise decreases just enough for them to hear one another.
You want me to call for anything else?
No.
Aloha 243. Looks like we've lost a door. We have a hole in the left side of the aircraft.
But the tower can't hear this new information. They've lost contact with the aircraft. Their transmissions aren't being picked up.
Aloha 243, you still up?
The airplane's critical systems are beginning to fail.
Aloha 243.
The stricken Boeing 737 heads for the island of Maui.
Aloha 243.
Hearing nothing from the aircraft, the controller fears the worst.
Aloha 243.
Aloha 243, still up.
Aloha 243, if you still hear, please
Ident.
Affirmative.
Aloha 243, roger. I got your ident straight away. Cleared to land, wind 040
at 20 knots.
Communication is restored, but the ordeal is far from over. During the descent, passengers experience moments of pure terror.
The plane kept vibrating and shaking, and the luggage racks were falling in, and there was electrical wires flying around zapping, and pretty much pandemonium, but it looked like the plane was ripping in half.
And suddenly, there's a new problem for the flight crew to handle.
Feels like manual reversion.
What?
The flight controls feel like manual reversion.
It feels to the pilot as though hydraulic systems, like power steering in an automobile, have now failed. The airframe is under great stress. They need to land as soon as possible.
Can we maintain altitude okay?
The crew fear that critical wiring and control cables may have been severed. Have any of the airplane's vital parts been damaged?
Let's try flying with the gear down.
All right, you got it.
There are lights to indicate whether or not the landing gear has safely deployed. The main undercarriage has extended as normal. But the light showing that the nose wheel had extended doesn't come on.
The last thing the pilot wanted to see, especially with his airplane in the condition it was in, was that he didn't have a nose gear, because when the nose touched down on the runway, it would have broken the airplane apart, therefore breaking probably the fuel tanks apart, which could lead to a very dramatic fire and explosion.
A second attempt to extend the landing gear. The nose gear light is still out. But the radio link is so bad, the tower is still trying to assimilate the crisis.
Aloha 243.
Just to verify, you do need an ambulance, is that correct?
I still don't understand. Affirmative.
Roger, how many do you think are injured?
We have no idea. We can't communicate with the flight attendants.
Okay, we'll have the ambulance on the way.
There's a possibility that we won't have a nose gear.
Now, Bob Schornsteimer has to make a critical decision. Should he wait for confirmation that the undercarriage is down, or land anyway?
The textbook in this case would tell the pilots to overfly the airfield so that the air traffic controllers can look at the landing gear and give them a report whether it's up or down. The pilots would then have to maneuver the airplane all the way around the airfield, come in for an approach, and land.
But with an airplane which might break apart at any moment, that is out of the question.
Tell them we've got problems. But we're going to land anyway, even without a nose gear. So they should be aware that we don't have a nose gear indication.